Perfect time. Okay. So our goal today is for me to give you a bit of an introduction about what's in this release and how we want to approach our testing this time around. What I'm going to try and do is focus people on the things that we're most in need of extra testing on, understanding that Chris and I have already done a moderate amount of testing of everything, and some things really haven't changed much. So we're going to be focusing on those things that have had significant change, and in a few cases we are going to hope to identify one of you to work with us a bit closer and help us to make some decisions about the features, because we're not entirely convinced whether the way that we've done it is perfect. So what we want to accomplish today is have everyone on the call reasonably familiar with the changes that have happened so that you can make some decisions about what you would like to work on for testing in terms of how much time you have available, what your comfort level is, and so on. After this call, and sometime over the weekend, I'm going to send out the document that you see in front of you right now, which is an Excel spreadsheet outlining all of the different areas that have changed. I'm also going to send out a link to a test plan, the test sites that we're going to use, the credentials that you'll need to log into those test sites, and so on. So all of that will be coming in at some point over the weekend. We'll see as we get the test sites upgraded exactly when. This video from our session right now will be going up tonight on YouTube, so that will be available for review anytime. And as soon as you want to get back to me, if you have particular preferences about what you'd like to test, whoever speaks up first gets it first. So we'll hope to get everything here assigned to someone. In some cases, the things like that say very high, like this one, is likely going to be, somebody's going to be in charge of this, and that's all they're going to do, because it's a more high-effort item. Whereas some of our smaller ones that say low, we may have a person take on 2 or 3 or even more of those. In some cases, it may only take 10 minutes for you to test that item. So we'll assign things according to how much time you have available and your preferences. If you let us know as soon as possible, we'll try and give you your preferences first. But even if you don't get your preferred area, we're happy to assist you in your testing if you don't understand how something works. In many cases, if you can't figure out how it works, that tells us something about what we've done and that maybe we need to have better instructions or a better interface. So that's important information for us as well, and you shouldn't feel at all upset or intimidated if you don't understand how something works, because that is something that we need to uncover during our testing process. In fact, it's going to be a very important part of our testing process this time, because our major change has been the ability to have more than one member in your database. And that has brought with it quite a lot more complexity to some of our setup areas. One of the things we're going to try and do is hide that complexity from anyone who doesn't have more than one member in their database, and I'll get into that. I'm going to go through this list and explain what each of these changes are and what they mean. I'll try and give you a little bit of a tour of that change in the software, if I can, at least a very high-level one. And try and give you a sense of what you would be doing if you were performing that kind of testing. If you have any questions, please let me know either now or offline by email or on the message board, and we'll do our best to get back to you as promptly as we can. There are 2 weeks for the main testing, so we're running from this weekend as soon as we get the test sites updated. It could be, any time from tomorrow to Sunday night. I don't want to say ahead of time when it's going to be, but sometime this weekend the test sites will go up, and that's when our testing will start. And it will complete as of, well, officially Friday, but actually Saturday the 26th. Okay, that's the end of our official testing period, although we still are accepting testing after that. That's just when we would like to have everything completed, because following that, on that weekend, we have beta testing, which is at least one and hopefully 2 of our members who will get the first upgrades to the software, and they will run that software for 1 week, and we will work with them closely to help them deal with any issues that they have. And then after 1 week, we will upgrade everyone else. If after this testing you are interested in some of these features and would like to be a beta tester and haven't already signed up to be a beta tester, please do let me know, because we're looking for at least one more beta tester, preferably one that uses the volunteer software. So I hope you'll see at least a few features that are just so exciting to you that you'll want to get them a week early. Okay, I am going to, as I usually do, mute everyone just to avoid any kind of audio issue. If you wish to speak, please use the little hand raise icon that you have available to you, and I will periodically check both the chat window and the hand raising and unmute you if you would like to let us know something or have a question. Does anyone have a question now? Okay, good. So as I said, the big feature that we have coming up is the multi-member database. What does that mean? So currently, every one of our CIOC members has their own database. And if they want to share records or other information with each other, they have to do it using the import and export tools if they're in the community information software. And if they're in the volunteer software, they're just plumb out of luck because we don't have any kind of sharing feature whatsoever for that module of our software. What this enhancement does is allow more than one of our members to coexist in the same database and share certain kinds of setup items and also share records with each other under very particular circumstances and security. So I'll give you a very quick tour of what some of this means. Please let me know if you have any trouble seeing my screen. So for the most part, you can do all the customizations that you have always been able to do. So unlike being in the same database as another agency now, which several of you on the call have multiple agencies in your database, and you try and operate somewhat independently with each other, this really draws lines in between the groups. So you would each have your own general setup options. You each have your own agencies. You each have your own users, your own templates, your own views. All of those things are yours and are configured individually for you. At the same time, you share quite a lot of the setup areas. So taking, for example, any of our checklists, you'll now have local items as well as shared items. So local items are ones that are just for you, and shared items are ones that anybody in the database can use. You can elect not to use any of the shared values if they don't apply to you specifically. And any of the ones that you create locally will not appear on the data entry forms of any of the other members in the database. So if you have a particular value that you locally like to use, but none of the other members in your database are interested in using that value, you can set it up as a local value and only you will see it. Whereas anything that you all agree to use would be created as a shared value, and it promotes some consistency, especially for sharing records with each other, so that you're all using the same values wherever possible. So that applies to the vast majority of our checklists, where you can have both a local value and a shared value. We have a few cases where everybody uses the same thing. Examples of that would be the street type. So there's one list for everybody. Everybody has to use the same list. And it will be in the test plan documented which of them are shared by everybody versus which ones you can create your own local versions of. Similar to that, we have the same kind of thing in publications. So here I have, these are my publications that are for my membership. So I'm only my membership can manage these and add them to records. These belong to me. And then I have shared publications, which any member in my database can access and use and add to their records. So and a lot of these 2-on-1 codes, for example, appear in many different databases. So everyone would have access to those to add to their records. If you don't want to use any shared value, you just click that you want to hide it, and that shared value will not appear in any of your forms. It will be like it doesn't exist. And finally, you can take a look at publications that were created by other members. You can see that those codes exist, but you can't actually work with them. I'm a global super user. What that means is my account in this case is a global super user, and what that means is I have control over anything that's shared across the whole database. And I have the ability then to take any code that someone has created as a local code and make it a shared one. So let's say my membership creates this particular code, and then it turns out that other people in my database need to use that same code because they're going to be involved in the project too. As a global super user, I would come in and say make shared, and then that code would be available to everyone in the database to use. Okay, so that's the fundamentals of how this, partly shared, partly my own setup works. And that trickles through to many different areas. The thesaurus, for example, is a fully shared system, meaning everyone uses the same thesaurus, but everyone can create their own local terms that are just for them. There can be shared local terms that different people can have access to. Your activations are completely your own. So if I choose not to use a subject and I deactivate it, that affects only me and my membership. It doesn't affect any of the other members. I'm going to be going into big detail with the taxonomy later, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's the same sort of thing where we have a shared system, but the activations are local. So I can do my own activations that are different from what another member does. But behind the scenes, we're all accessing the same copy of the taxonomy. Communities is a completely shared system, and there are a few others. Areas of interest are completely shared. So again, this will all be documented in the test plan. It's actually documented in something that we put together before we did this project. So I'll just be copying that information over into the test plan, and you can read which things are supposed to be fully shared and which things are supposed to be customizable for each member. And a reminder to everyone that you do not have to go into a database with another member. This will be an option available to people who want to join together. It will also be an option to those of our members who previously joined but want to split back up again but stay in the same database. So it's not going to be forced on anyone. It's totally optional. Okay. One of the new features that's a result of this multi-member database is our notices area. Because we have two kinds of super users now, a local super user, which has control only over local values and customizations that are for me and my membership only, versus a global super user, which has control over setup values that are used by everybody in this database, no matter what their membership. If a local super user needs to make a change, and they can't, so if they wanted to have a publication made shared, or they wanted to make a change to something shared by everyone, like the taxonomy or the thesaurus, they would have to contact one of those global super users. And the way that works is there's something called a notices area, where instead of going in, if I clicked on, say, mapping categories, and I don't have permission to change what the mapping categories are because they apply to the entire database, it would send me into an area in order to do a notice. And I'll give an example. So here is the same. This is I'm in the same database. It's a different membership, and I'm a local super user. So what happens is, if I click on find something I'm not allowed to get access to here. Here we go. Communities. So I'm a local super user. Communities are fully shared. They're global. I can't do anything to them. I click it. It takes me to a notices area where I can say, whatever it is I need done, okay? And it's going to send that change request. And then me, being a global super user, I'm going to get this little icon telling me that there's notices. Somebody has requested something. So here I can see someone requested a change to communities. This is the request that they made, when they made it and who made it. I can view the details of it, and I can go and then make the modification. And when I'm finished, I can close the request saying that I completed that. So it's a way for people who don't have permissions to ask for changes. I'm going to pause briefly and ask if there's any questions yet. Okay. And again, all of this, what's a global super user, what's a local super user? If you're the only member in your database, if if you're the only member in your database, you will not see all of that complexity because it will be hidden from you. Okay. So back to my testing list. These are the areas that we're looking to identify testers for. In this case, most of them are going to require one tester be pretty much dedicated just to that task because it is such a big task. So I'll get into sharing profiles, but an example is our one-member database. So we're going to be setting up a testing database that has more than one member in it and another testing database that only has one member. This one-member database tester, whoever this may be, their job will be to work in the one-member database and go into all of the setup areas and everywhere in the software and make sure that it doesn't talk about other members in your database so that any, or global super users. Or
testing 1, 2, 3.
Pardon me? So that it doesn't talk about any of those things if you are the only member in your database, because we don't want to introduce complexity when it doesn't apply. So this particular tester, what they will do is go through all of those setup screens, pretty much just visiting all the different pages of the software, read it over and look for areas where it's talking about other members or sharing or any of those things that don't apply if you are the only member in your database. We have another tester's job will be to look at things as a local super user and then as a global super user and make sure each one of them sees only the things they're supposed to see. So if they're not supposed to have access to editing shared values because they're not a global super user, they shouldn't be able to do that. So that their entire job will be to go around the setup areas as both a local and a global super user and make sure that the global super user can edit all the shared things and that the local super user cannot, and that's their entire job. We have another one which is basic, just basic, going to each form, make a change, submit it. That's it. We haven't changed the function of the setup items except to do with the shared, so there isn't a need to go into extremely in-depth testing of most of the setup screens because they haven't changed sufficiently, but we do want to make sure that they are submitting properly and so on. So that would be a very basic, load each form in the setup areas, make a change, submit it, delete an item if you can, and as we discussed, someone's job will be to review shared and local items and that the separation is being done appropriately and so on. And then we have a very tiny testing area which will be creating notices, processing the notices. I'm going to quickly try and explain what sharing profiles are. Whoever is my sharing profile tester though, I'm going to work with you, I'm going to give you some extra training on sharing profiles, just one-on-one to make sure you understand how the sharing profiles work and also any extra support that you need to make that work. But someone's job is going to be entirely creating sharing profiles, which is how you share a record with another member in your database, creating them, adding records to them, taking records out of them, revoking them, which means saying that you don't want to have that agreement anymore, and so on. So that would be someone's whole testing job, basically, would be to create those sharing profiles and make sure that people only have access to records when they're shared and that when they're not being shared, you don't have access to them and so on. So that would be someone's whole job. I'll give you a quick example of what a sharing profile is. Okay, sharing profile. Okay, so you can have as many sharing profiles as you want, but every record in your database can only be shared with another member one time. So if I'm sharing a record with Find Help, I can only share it with one profile. So I could have two different sharing profiles agreements that I have with Find Help. One being, you can access, these 25 fields for these records and use them in any of your views. And then I have another sharing profile that says you can only access these 5 fields and you're not allowed to do anything else with the record. So every record that I share with Find Help has to be associated with just one of those profiles. I can't share the record with both because they have different security and you wouldn't know which one to use. So every record that you want to share with someone is associated with exactly one of these sharing profiles. It applies to community information and volunteer. So you can share volunteer records or community information records. They each can have a sharing profile. A sharing profile is first created. You basically draft it and set up all the security that you want to have for it. Can the person that I'm sharing with update the record? Can they use the record in print tools? Can they export? Can they update publications? Can they view private information? Can they view feedback about the record? What views are they allowed to use this record in? What fields can they access? Okay, so it's very detailed. Once you have completed the draft of your profile, you send it to your partner. Say, this is the agreement I want to have with you, and if they like the agreement, they will accept that agreement. Once it's accepted, the only thing that you can do with it is add and remove records from it and add new views or fields. So you can't take away any privileges once the agreement is in place. Also, once the agreement is in place, there's something called a revocation period. What that means is if I decide I don't want to share with you anymore, I have to wait. I have to give you exactly this much notice before I take it away. So if I have an agreement with someone and I say I promise to give you 90 days notice, then if I wanted to stop sharing with my partner, I would have to have the system send them a notice 90 days before I can actually get rid of this sharing profile. That's so that you can't, pull the rug out of someone and say, oh, suddenly I'm not going to share these records with you anymore, ha-ha. It basically enforces the contract. So if you've said, I'm going to give you 90 days, it will not let you take that profile away with fewer than 90 days of notice. That also applies to removing records. If the person who's doing the sharing wants to remove a record, they have to give whatever number of days of notice. The person on the other end can take it out right away. So again, I'm not going to get into really deep detail on this one because whoever wants to do this with me, I will assist you on a more personal basis to understand how this works and to try it out, and certainly to give me feedback about what I can do to make it easier to use if there's any problems with that and understanding how it works. Okay, so you can view this as no records in it. Let me find my has records. And for this, you can remove records from the profile. You can use our bulk tools to add new records to the profile. And again, it's all done within the period of time that you said that you'll let them know. So I can't take out records before tomorrow because there's a one-day revocation period on this profile. So if I wanted to take some of these records out of the sharing profile, I would have to have a date on or after tomorrow, and then they would be removed so that people are given notice and have time to deal with the fact that things are going away before it happens. Okay, so moving on to the next thing. Everything else is less complicated than that, so I'm glad to have the most complicated thing out of the way first. The next area, do we have any questions on multi-member database before I move on to the next area? I know it is really complicated, but I will work closely with anyone who does that testing to give you any more instruction that you need. Okay. Our next area of changes is our communities, and there's quite a few significant changes around that. And I have my eye on John and Corinne for this one because you've already done some work with our new communities repository, which goes along with this change. Oh, I've got a question. Is the notice automatic, or do agencies have to make contact to alert what records are revoking? Yes, the notice is automatic. So the software automatically takes care of emailing the super users of the other membership to let them know that that has happened. So you would also get, depending on what kind of change, you would get notices in your little notices area. So that new thing that I showed you up at the top, the notices area, okay? But we have it set up to send emails. So it would actually send an email to every super user in the membership, letting them know that that had happened. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Angela. So the community. we've made some pretty significant changes, not just to the structure of the communities, but also maintenance. And that starts with changes to the naming. So we've added a feature to allow alternate names. So if a given community goes by more than one name, we'll keep the official name, but you can also add as many alternate names as you wish. Go to the setup, have a quick look at our new form. Okay, so we now have an alternate names area, and I can add as many new names as I want. And so on, okay, in whichever language. So that's a pretty simple one. We are allowing a province and state to be added to the communities. That's managed with 2 areas with the same name. So if I have an Orangeville in Ontario and I also have an Orangeville in New Brunswick, making it up there, I can specify specifically where that area is, and then it will not cause a naming conflict because it will allow them to both exist with the same name but with a different province, state, or country. Again, that one's another quite simple thing to be testing. What we want to do is, so that the actual changes that you'll see around this is if I search for the alternate name, it will bring up the real name. I'll give a quick example. If I can find one. Here we go. So here, under Whitestone, you can see I did a search, but test is not contained in anywhere in here, and that's likely because there's been I've added a test alternate name, and when I searched for it, it ends up bringing up this because it has an alternate name with test in it, as an example. Okay. And in terms of our province, state, and country, what happens is if you add 2 with different province, state, or country, so if I made another Orangeville, then when I look it up in the Community Finder, it's automatically going to add the province, state, or country to it when it returns the results, so that I can distinguish one from the other. And it does not show the province, state, or country unless there is a conflict. So if I only have one Hamilton and I say that Hamilton is in Ontario, it's not going to say Hamilton, Ontario every time it brings it up. But if I add another Hamilton in another province, then when I start searching for Hamilton, in the search results, it's going to say Hamilton, Ontario, and Hamilton, whatever, Hamilton, Bermuda. It will be specific so that I can distinguish between the 2 Hamiltons. And 2 more things. So we have a new kind of community called an alternative search area. And what that does, I should have one in here. I'll do an add alternative search area. An alternative search area works almost just like a regular community. So I can add it to records, I can add it to my search form, I can search using it. But it doesn't belong in the hierarchy of communities in the same way. It can overlap. So in the past, we weren't allowed to have communities that overlapped with each other, and this allows us to do that. So if I wanted to create, I know this applies in Saskatchewan, Angela, one of these health regions that doesn't really fit nicely with the way the community should be organized, I can create my health region. I can say, you know, when someone's searching for the health region, these are the communities that they mean. So if I can just add as many as I want. It will look under whatever you say the parent community is. If I say the parent community is Ontario, then it will only allow me to add search communities that are part of Ontario. So I could add, you know, Hamilton, Halton, and what will happen is it will then act as if it was all of these communities. So when I do my searching, if I publish New Altaria 1, anytime I add New Altaria 1 to a record, it's the same behind the scenes as if I had added both of these communities. So in all ways, it's going to behave just like it had all of these communities instead of this new one that I create. So, but it's all hidden behind the scenes. So if I searched for New Ontario 1, it would bring up anything that was in Hamilton or Halton region. If I add New Ontario 1 to a record and someone searches for Hamilton, New Ontario 1 is going to show up in the search results. Angela had asked, or Michelle had asked, will multi-member options allow each member to have different update email request text? Oh yes, and even better than that, one of our features is you can actually have more than one update email request text, even in the same membership. I'll get to that later. All right, and our final change to communities is the ability to update your version. So we have our new communities repository that anyone can request an account to. And this is our communities repository. So this is now one central place for us to do the management of communities, that everyone can come and go and get a download file. You click on the download file you want, save it to your computer, you say update communities version, you load the file in, blah, 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 and you click, I'm not going to do it now, and you click upload file and poof, you're synchronized to the newest version. Yay! So everyone can all be on the same version of the community file. What happens if you have things that can't match properly is it'll give you a report of it at the end and let you know which communities it sort of didn't update to the master version because it didn't match, records attached, or you've marked it as a local community that's special to your database and so on. So this, I mentioned John and Corinne because they had done some work in our communities repository, so they're a great pair to potentially be testing this particular item because you could make some changes in the communities repository, ask us to publish a file, and you can test updating our test site to the new version of that communities information. It's pretty simple because you just hit browse, upload, and you're done. So definitely not a hard thing to test. Do we have any questions about communities changes?
I have one. Is that centrally controlled?
Yeah, the repository is
going to have moderators.
Yes, it has moderators, exactly. So it's not just for Ontario, Angie. It's we actually have Mark Winfield currently working on Saskatchewan's communities in there. The thing we have to work out is the licensing. So the board is currently working on what all the licensing would be. We'd like to be consistent, not just for Ontario, but for everywhere. So the board is just working out what the licensing will be, especially for all of our members that are not in Ontario and have created their own communities information. And then we hope to have everybody manage their communities in this one central place, and everybody can synchronize to it to be on the same version. Okay. Next is the fun one. Next are the searching changes. So we've got a couple of minor ones. You'll see in my Excel sheet that everyone is going to get. I have a few of these that say not applicable for user testing effort. That is because the change is so simple. We've tested it. It does not need any more testing. So I'm not going to assign testers to it. But you're welcome to check it out if you wish. The first one is a really minor one. The sidebar count for a subject search, for those of you still using the thesaurus. Here's a subject sidebar. And see if I can find, here we go. So here is our with searches. Our search, child abuse with, and it represents another term. So it's where you search two terms together. And the counts that were here used to be whatever the count was of this subject and not the count of the two together. So it's just been corrected. So if I click on this now, it's actually going to bring up 21, whereas if you go into your current databases and you try this, the number you have here and the number you get when you click will not be the same. So that's just a fix, and it works. It doesn't need to be tested. We've made some very minor changes to defaults on the child care search form, which you can check out if you wish. Here's where it actually gets fun. So here are new cool search features. Refine your search and recent search history are connected, so I'll quickly demo both of those. Okay, so here I am. I just did a search for child abuse and sexual assault, and you can see I have records from all over the place. I have some in Barrie and some in Hamilton and Newmarket, and actually I really only wanted the ones in Hamilton. So I'll click Refine My Search. It's going to say this was the search I just did. It tells me when I searched and what I searched for. Okay, I'm going to say actually just met the ones in the city of Hamilton. So it's now going to search both of those together, and I said, oh, you know, and that must have been serving. Serving, I actually meant located in the city of Hamilton, not serving. So I'll refine it again. Say this time, show me ones located in the city of Hamilton. And you can see it keeps adding criteria, and I can keep going and going and going. So if I wanted just ones that were the Catholic Children's Aid or something, I can say also add the criteria Catholic in the organization name. And I can just keep searching and searching and searching and searching. Okay, so you can refine your search as many times as you want. You can just keep adding and adding, although eventually the software will decide you have too much criteria and will probably not work if you got really crazy about it. But there's no specific limit. And this refine your search applies to absolutely everything. So it applies to browse by subject. So if I say everything that starts with, are all the subjects, I'll do browse by subject, not browse by, there we go. All the things that start with V. Oh, I actually want all the things that start with V that are located in Glanbrook. Okay, there we go. And so on and so forth. So I can refine anything. I can even refine my state searches. I can refine if I check a few of these and I want to search, I do a new result set. So here I've picked some specific records. I can even refine pretty much anything. And connected to this is I now have a full history, 20 searches, of everything I searched for. So it will tell me when I searched, how many records were returned, what I searched for. If I mouse over the number of records, it'll tell me which view I was searching in. So if I wanted to perform the same search in a different view, it would return a different record count. So it's very specific about that. I can then search. When any of my old searches, I can search again, and I can choose to refine that search if I want to add more criteria. So if I take this search for family support, I can search it, and it'll redo my search. If I go back to my recent searches, it's going to pop that to the top because it's now my most recent search. So it took it from the bottom and it popped it up to the top. I can then take this recent searches, I can change my view and redo my searches in this view. So here I got 143 records in CIC data management in English. Now I'm only going to get 116. If I go back to my recent searches, now it says 116, and it tells me that I found it in the CCAC test view. So it knows. I can also switch languages. So if I want to switch into French and do the same search, pardon the untranslated strings, I can research again, search again, and it's going to show me I found 40 because there's only 40 in French. If I go back to my recent searches now, that's going to have changed to 40 records, and it's going to tell me that I searched in CCAC in French. Okay? And again, I can refine it or research it at any time, and that holds up to 20 searches. We're open to feedback. If people think 20 is the wrong number, we do have to have a limit on how many of these we let you keep because it's quite a lot of data to be keeping in your session, so we do have to impose a limit. But while you're working with this, if you have some feedback you want to give us, if you think 20 is the wrong number, please let us know. Anyone have any questions about how that works? Okay. This works for the volunteer software as well. So everything I've done here, you can do in all the different kinds of volunteer searches as well. So it works in the what's new search, the step-by-step search, the keyword search, any of the searches you can do in the volunteer software, it works there as well. It also works with the My List feature. For anyone using My List, you can bring up your list and search within your list. Okay. So that's those two. This is a really, really simple one. We've got, it goes along with the refine your search. When you do the advanced search, if you don't click that you want to display the details of your search, then it's not going to show you information about your search when you have your recent search history. So in order to not drive people crazy trying to remember to tick the box to display the details of their search every time, it's now going to remember the last setting you had. So you can see that this was already checked when it came to the form. If I do a new search without it, and then go back to advanced search, now it's going to remember that I didn't want it, and so on, and I can keep doing that, and it will remember whatever my last setting was. And the same is true for opening your search results in a new window. So it just sticks, remembering that your last preference, and that lasts for your session, which is basically the day. Auto-quote organization name selected from autocomplete menu. I'm going to explain this one. I'm going to show you how it works, and I'm also going to say we're not entirely happy with how it works, and whoever tests this, we would like to work with them to decide whether we need to make any further changes about how this works. The idea of this particular change is people were getting very annoyed if they were searching, say, Big Brothers, say this one, and then they were getting records that were not, that didn't have this as the organization name after they picked it. They were getting too many records. So the change we've made is it's automatically putting quotation marks around it after you pick it from the list, so that you're only going to get, hopefully, only going to get things that have that exact name and not just the keywords anywhere. So the results are a bit more meaningful and hopefully more what people expect to have. The thing we're concerned about is we're not giving you a way to not quote it if you don't want to. So this is why we want whoever chooses to test this, we'd like to work with you and get your feedback about what this should do, if we're really happy with the way it works now or if it needs some adjustments. This is a child care specific one, and I'll leave it to Anita to test that because they funded it and it really only affects them. It's basically instead of having to match all or any of the children, you can pick a specific child. Child care. You can pick a specific child that you want to match of the 1, 2, 3, 4. I can say I can enter in all the dates of birth of the children, but then do searches on each of them individually just by clicking the specific child that I wanted to match for that particular search. Not something that applies to most of you. Okay. And finally, we have a volunteer change, which goes along with some changes we've made to how we keep the number of positions information for the volunteer software. And this is just the ability to not show the number of individuals needed on the search page. So anyone who works with the volunteer software will hopefully, that will be really clear what that means. Okay, I have a question. Oh, just Angie's having trouble with her audio. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the searching feature? Okay. So next we have some setup and security changes. Some of them are very minor. Making it clear which views are public. This is an ongoing issue we've had where people have accidentally made views public and not realized it. So what we've done is in our view setup, it's now broken down into public views and private views. So it's instantly obvious whether a particular view is public or not, which should hopefully take away any accidental making a view public that you don't mean to. We don't need to test that because, as you can see, it works. We have the ability to have a show all link for the situation there is that often for the organizations, you really just want a list of all of them and not having to go alphabetically. So we've added this show all link at the end. So instead of having to go into each individual letter, you can just click show all and it will give you the full list of organizations. And the same is true for the areas of interest that we have show all. So you don't have to go into each individual letter, you can just click show all. So minor change, doesn't need to be tested. We've made some improvements over when we're linking to records in various reports. The issue here was, say in our statistical report, it would show a link to all the records, even if you didn't actually have current access to that record in the view that you were working in, which was very confusing. So, for instance, this particular record is not available in the view that I'm working in, so I can see that there are statistics on that, but I don't get the clickable link, because if I clicked it, it would give me a security error, because in the view that I'm working in right now, I don't have access to it. So it's a minor change, but it's just to avoid the annoyance of clicking on things that then give you a security error saying you can't access it. This applies to all our statistical reports, the deleted record area, I have a list of it, in the import record area, anywhere where we're listing records where you can see what those records are, but if you clicked on the record details, you wouldn't have access to it in the view that you were currently working. So it's just to avoid confusing people, and we don't need to test that because it's already been tested. Okay, add this. So for those of you familiar with social media, there's a service called Add This, which many of you would have seen on sites like CBC News and so on. This service allows you to share things on Facebook or LinkedIn or Digit, or there's a million of them. Take your pick. I got it turned on here. I need to find a view where I've actually got this turned on. I have it in here. There we go. Share. Okay. So here is the Add This. So this is optional. It can be turned on in your view. It allows you to share this record using various social media sites. So this is available both for community information and volunteer, and it's totally up to each member to decide whether they are comfortable with adding this feature to any given view, if they think it's appropriate. The service that we use has a privacy policy that's available directly from you can see right here from the link that says what the privacy policy is, how the service works, and allows you to do some settings about your preferred social media. So the settings are actually based on the user. The services they see are not based on what you set up, but rather based on what the user who's visiting the record wants to use and their preferences with Add This. And as I say, this service is used by many, many major sites. So lots of people may already have this configured to show their preferred social media sites. Any questions about that one?
Kate, I have a question about this, which is if you're in the data management view and but that is the view from which you want to share, the shared version would be the public view. Is this correct? I'm trying to just understand.
So it doesn't know, unless you've changed your view, it doesn't know which view you're in. So it would share whatever is in your location bar. So if I'm not logged in, that's going to be the public view.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. And that's all, because I'm thinking that
if I change my view like this, and then that's in the location bar, then that's what it's going to send.
But the person,
if they didn't have access to it, they wouldn't get access to it. Yeah, all the correct security is there. It's not going to give anybody access to anything that they wouldn't normally have access to. Okay, so that's, again, this is to share it. So it's not about, what is the Facebook page for this organization. It's about, I like this record. I want to tell somebody about it. So I'm going to click on it. I want to email this record to my friend. I want to, and so forth. Okay? So it's about sharing with someone else rather than about this particular record's social media. That we have too, but that's a different feature. Okay. Publication usage reports. Okay, so we've got a bunch of new reporting to assist people in understanding how publications are used. So I was on this screen earlier. This is the new publications management screen. So you can see right away that this tells you a lot more about your publications than it used to. So it's going to tell you how many of your local records, meaning records I owned, this isn't a multi-member database, records I own are using it, how many records owned by other people are using it, and how many of my views are using it. If I'm a global super user, which I am, then I can see how many of other people's views are using this particular publication, because that may help tell me what to do when I'm managing this publication. So here I can see there's another member that's using publication B for a publication view. So it gives you a real sense of how these things are actually being used. If I do my print version, I get even more information. I get to even see how many views are using it in their quick list. So incredibly detailed information. Is it non-public? How many headings are there? So I get a full sense of how all the different publications are being used. If I've hidden any of the publications, meaning I personally am not using this one for my membership, it's got a flash through it. And a similar thing for headings. So I can view my headings report, and it's going to tell me how many records are using it. If it's being used as a quick list and any publication views, I would get that information as well. So it's just really, really detailed information, hopefully to help people manage their gigantic lists of publications and headings. Any questions about that? Okay, so next we've got the web developer user type. So in the release version of the software, in order to, say, hire a web developer to make a nice template for you, you would have to give them super user access into your database to make some modifications, which is really not a great thing. So we came up with the web developer user type option, which allows you to give access just to templates and views and not anything else. So they wouldn't be able to change any other kinds of setup options except the templates and adding and changing design templates and views, and that's it. So they cannot change anything to do with security. They can't change, taxonomy or thesaurus or any other kind of setup. So this allows you to work with a third-party web developer to make you a nice-looking site without having to worry that they have full setup access to everything in your database, basically. So that's just in your user type setup. There's a new thing called, just says web developer. Pardon my fast clicking here. Okay, there we go. Website designer developer. So if I click website designer developer, they get the ability to change just the template-related items and layouts, but not any of the other setup items. So you can't be a super user and a web developer at the same time, because obviously if you're a super user, you don't need to be a website developer. So if you tried to do that, it would just ignore the website developer thing. Okay. Here's another, just hopefully giving people better information, that we have the ability to have an agency exclusively own a view, template, or layout. And now in the drop-down, it's going to clearly show that that's the case. So here we see I have GU in square brackets. That means the agency GU exclusively controls this view, and only someone who is from GU can change that one. Okay? So that I can clearly see that that is not one that's available for just any super user to modify. It has to be someone from this agency. And the same holds true for templates and layouts. All right, our other social media change, which is the ability to have built-in social media fields about the record. So here's an example of our new social media field. YouTube sucks. You'll be able to, it has built-in icons. There's a whole bunch of different social media types. You can decide which ones you want to use, and on the update form, it will just list the ones that you set up for your database, and then you would put in the specific addresses for that service for that particular record. So if I go to update this one, I have some really weird data in this record, so please forgive me. Here's my, okay, so these are all of the social media sites I've configured in my particular database, so I could just fill in whichever ones apply to this particular record. You do not have to use all of these. So from the setup area, you can turn on and off the particular social media site that you want to make available. Okay? Any questions about that?
What does the public user see to update?
That. It looks just like that.
Oh, that's great.
It looks exact. So the feedback form looks exactly like this. Okay? It's not one big blob of cruddy text. It looks exactly like what you see here.
Okay. That's great.
Let me even show you. Where is feedback? Oh, yeah, right. That's an update. Okay, so exactly the same. Okay, so that's social media fields. On to, and that should actually be under the data management section, and it is. I have that twice. Okay, two very basic ones, which we don't really need to test. We now have a deleted by field, so when you delete a record, it fills in this new field called deleted by, which you can add to your record details if you want to, and tracks who did the deletion. And we're also behind the scenes tracking a history of the deletion date and deleted by fields, so that if there was an issue, you could contact us and we could look up the history of that field. Eventually, we want to make it so that you can see that information, but at least for now, we're tracking it. So if you're concerned that a record was deleted and then not deleted, deleted and not deleted, we would have a full record of every time that changed. So we would be able to go back and see exactly how that had changed over time and who made the changes. So pretty basic. Okay, we have our new bulk tools. So these two go together, the clear all codes and the add multiple codes. And we'll talk talk about them as one thing. I'll do add remove distribution code. Okay, so yay! I can add or remove a multiple at once. So I can say delete all values, and it would delete every single distribution code in this record. I can say delete just these two, and it would delete those two. And same with that. I can say just add, these three, and it would add those three. So you no longer have to do it one at a time. Yay!
Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay, so the same holds true for publication. I have a list of, if you go into the feature in the enhancements database, it's specific about which things that works on. Online resources spring, here we go. Right, so publication, distribution, and classification codes. So classification codes is going to include thesaurus, taxonomy. You can have a look here. So I can say subject term. I can do, this is for clear all. I can delete all values, so I could remove every subject instead of just one. And for our add, let me see which ones exactly. There we go. So for our add, it's specifically publication and distribution codes that you can add multiple. Okay. So again, I can then, if I want to add or remove, I can do it with multiple, right? I can say delete multiple, or I can delete all values, and it would clear all the publication codes from that record in one go. Now you can You can only remove the ones that you have permission to remove. So if I said delete all values, and I didn't have permission to modify a particular publication, it would not remove the ones that I don't have permission to edit. Okay, so there's security attached to this beyond what you see. If I can't see it in this list, that means I'm not allowed to modify it, and it would only remove the things that I see here. So if there are codes that I don't see here because I don't have permission to be working with those publication codes, they would not be removed. Okay? All right. Show why record can't be permanently deleted. Pardon me. There we go. Go to my deleted records page here. Okay, so in the past, you would sometimes see no checkbox for permanently deleting a record or no link to permanently delete it, but it wouldn't tell you why. So now we're telling you why you can't delete a record. Here's our legend, so we'll show you you can't delete it because it's shared with you and you don't own it. You can't delete it because there's a volunteer opportunity, it's associated with an agency, or it's part of a volunteer membership. So, and the same holds true for the volunteer side. It will tell you why you can't delete a volunteer record. So if I scroll down, somewhere around here, it's going to be one that I can't delete. There we go. So V, that means I can't delete this record because it has a volunteer opportunity attached to it. So, simple. Oh, this is going to be fun. Okay, so do we have any volunteer folks on the call? Yeah. All right. Our volunteer software has changed in a pretty significant way around these number of opportunities. Go to the volunteer menu. Okay, so no more number of positions. We now have areas of need. You can optionally specify the total number of people, but that's optional. And the number of positions is now optional. So you just select the community that you want, and if you want to, you can say how many people are needed in that community, but it's entirely optional. So I can say Ancaster, have it appear as one of the communities and work in the searches without ever putting a number of positions there if I don't want to. So that's become entirely optional. So that is going to be a significant, for those who work in the volunteer software, that's going to be a pretty significant change, and you have to decide how you want to do your data management based on that change. But a lot of people want to get rid of the specific number of positions, so this gives you that option. Sometimes it just doesn't apply. There may be, say, 24 positions total from specific communities, but it doesn't break down that there's 6 here and 5 there and 3 there. It just means that there's that many total across any of the communities selected, so this now allows you to do that. Okay? Any questions about that one? What goes along with this is the other change that we made to make it so that you don't have to show the number of positions on the main screen. So if you stop keeping track of the number of positions, you're not going to want to show the number of positions on the main page. So that's why they go together, and you would want to change the setup of your view to not show the number of positions on the main page anymore. Okay, multiple standard email update text values. So as Michelle pointed out earlier, we are going to have more than one of these values for each member. But beyond that, we've actually allowed you to do more than one. Let me find it here. There we go. More than one in, maybe I'm not updated. Well, bug number one. So the idea here is you can actually have more than one outgoing email text. So if you send out an update for a particular purpose and you want a special message for that particular kind of update request, you could create a special message for that and decide to use that for particular requests. Or if you have more than one agency in the database and they each want to have their own, update email request text, then you can do that. So Margaret has a question about have templates been integrated into this new version where you can't edit specific fields since it's specific to a template? So we've had, I'm pretty sure I know what you mean. We've had that capacity for a while if people want to configure it, Margaret. It's done using record types, and every record type you set up you can set it up so that it only has certain fields available to edit. But most of our members don't actually make use of that, and it doesn't fill in particular values in fields. So all it does is say, you know, here I am editing a subject record, and I only want fields because it's a subject record. And if you wanted to, you're talking specifically about, say, Service Ontario and so on. So if you wanted to create a record type for Service Ontario and all the records of that type only have these specific fields, you could, if you wanted to, create that as a record type and only have those particular fields available. But it would be up to you to configure that. It's not built in. That said, I mean, it would really be extremely hard for us to distribute that to people because it's a view-by-view basis where people configure their forms to have the things that they want on the form. So it's not really something we can distribute. But anyone who wants to take the time to set that up, the software has the ability to do that if you wanted to.
But it doesn't refer to the content.
No, it doesn't, exactly. It doesn't refer to the content. If you wanted to be able to have sort of content-based templates, that would be a new enhancement. We don't even have an enhancement request for that. So if that's something that you want to have the ability to do, where it actually controls the content of the record, you would have to submit a new request. Because at the moment, we don't even have a request for that. So it's never going to get done unless we actually have a request saying that somebody wants that feature. Okay. So sorry, my standard email update text is broken. But suffice it to say, you can have more than one message, and when you go to send your email update request, you would pick from the available types of messages, and it would use that to do the sending. So every member has their own, but even in a single membership, you'll be able to configure more than one message now. We already discussed the social media fields. This one isn't done, so I can't show it to you. We got last-minute funding to make this change, which we'll be doing next week, which will allow, if you've added the publication to the record, or if you're working in a publication view, it will allow you to add the general headings as a field onto the update form. So you wouldn't have to separately go into publication management to add the headings. You could add it directly when you were editing the main record. It's not available for me to show you, as I say, but whoever picks this, I can give them a separate demo if they need it once it's finished. Okay. I'm afraid we're down to some boring ones here, but at least we're almost through our list. Remove deprecated export formats. There were two formats that we have been saying for the past 3 years that they were deprecated, meaning they were going to go away, and we've been telling people don't use these formats. And because of changes that we've made for security to our exports, we couldn't keep those any longer. So we've removed the eddy-based export. There is no more eddy-based export. And we removed our old version 1 of the Microsoft record set XML format for anyone who used that to bring their data into an Access database. At this point, we actually recommend that you use the Excel tool to do that anyway. And we have the version 2 of it. It's still working. But we've gotten rid of version 1 because it wasn't compatible with using export profiles. Which brings me to this feature. All export profiles must, all exports must use profiles. This is to put some security on the export so that we don't have a case of anyone who has export privilege can basically export anything. We've changed it so that every export must be done with an export profile, so not just the sharing format, but every kind of export. And export profiles are limited by view, so you have control. If you have a leased view and you want to give them export privileges to only certain fields, you can create an export profile for them and make it available in their view, and they would only be able to export the specific fields that you said that they could export and nothing more. So this is all security related. And the final one is a very minor change when doing imports. Go to my main menu here. In the past, when you're adding records and you wanted to view a list of the records that were incoming to add, it didn't tell you what the name of the record was. It just had the record number. And that was pretty useless. So now when you go to the report of the records that are new, it will actually show you what you see here, which is not just the record number, but also the name of the record as it appears in the incoming data. So minor change, but hopefully a helpful one. Any questions about the import-export changes?
The people in a shared database or a
Don't need that.
multi-member,
Yep.
it's done by permissions rather than import-export.
That's right. So people who would be working in a multi-member database wouldn't need to do the import-export because they use sharing profiles to share records with one another. And everything is controlled by the security of the sharing profile. So the sharing profile would say, you know, which fields I'm sharing with you, which records I'm sharing with you, what you're allowed to do with that record, and so on. Finally, we have two features around volunteer profiles. The first is a bit of reporting capability that we've added around volunteer profiles being members of the public being able to sign up for an account on your database and be notified of new and updated opportunities in your database, things that match their search profile, being able to automatically fill out applications, and so on. So in the past, if the person who made a profile didn't give contact consent, they were completely excluded from all the reporting in the volunteer profile section, which is a bit problematic because people at least wanted it for statistical purposes, even if they couldn't contact the person. So what we've added is an anonymous information. So it's going to show you that person, but it's anonymized the information so that it keeps their privacy because they haven't agreed to be contacted, but it's contacted. So here you can see it's just anonymized the information, but it still allows you to get in to do some things that were needed, like the ability to block a person who's being problematic, who's submitting a million applications and spamming people. We have the ability for the manager here to come in and block that profile and have it disabled. But if they couldn't get access to it because the person hadn't turned on contact consent, they actually couldn't get in to block it. So by doing this, we've made sure that the manager can go in and block any application no matter what the contact consent, but we've done our best to still give some anonymity to the person, so we're not printing their full name, we're not printing their full email, and still giving them some privacy. So that's that. This last one, we need someone to work with us on. So there have been some sort of generic complaints about people not understanding the process of verifying their volunteer profile account. So there's a whole email verification process that happens when someone applies for a volunteer profile to prevent spammers from signing up for the site. And there were reports of some users struggling with the process and not understanding how the verification process works. So we've done our best to improve the wording, but we would like to work with someone directly on a sort of step-by-step basis to see if there's still room for some improvement on our wording or whether we're giving people enough information to understand how this works. So whoever picks this one, we hope will actually maybe do a step-by-step with us and let us know if they think there's any further changes required. Well, that's it. So that's our release. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer about the process? Or, oh, here we go, I've got one. John wants to know about the multi-member database. What would be the advantages compared to their current shared database? So we have a number of our members who used to be in their own memberships who came together into a single membership. And John wants to know what would be the advantage of them being in a multi-member database versus what they have now. And it's actually extremely significant. Basically, you get back most of the control that you used to have by being separate, meaning you have quite a bit of control over your setup areas. You don't run into each other in terms of seeing other people's views and templates and who modified my view, who added my user. There's all kinds of sort of security bickering that tends to go on because you end up with multiple different super users who all have control over each other's things, control over each other's taxonomy activations, and you all have to share everything. Oh, that reminds me, I missed my taxonomy stuff. Where's my taxonomy stuff? I must have deleted it. Oh, hey, there's more. Okay, I'm not really done. So this basically allows almost all of the customization that people used to get as their own membership, and plus they then have membership rights, the same that they had always had before of voting rights and other rights as a CIOC member that they would have had previously. And the idea, which it hasn't been formalized how this will work, but the idea being that if you're in a multi-member database, you would have a discounted rate because it's less costly for CIOC to have multiple members in one database than having each member have their own membership. So there would be a cost savings to being in a multi-member database, plus all of the ability to share records with one another, but everyone could maintain their own membership and control over their own setup areas, their own voting rights, and so on. Michelle is asking about the multi-member features. Is it province-wide CIOC membership? So it will be completely up to our members to decide whether they want to be in the database with each other. So we're not going to make anybody do anything. But if we get requests from our members to go together into a single database, then we will work with them to do that. There will be a cost involved to merging two members into one. If you are already in one database, such as the Toronto, Durham, York situation, it's actually extremely simple to split you up. If you are in separate databases, it's basically as much work as it ever would have been to combine you into one database. So you would have to contact us to get a quote on what it would cost to get together into one database, because we have to combine all your settings into one. But on an ongoing basis, there's a fee discount to being in the same database, although that's yet to be determined exactly how much of a discount. So there's a long-term financial savings to being in together. But whether our people are in the same database or not will be completely up to them. And there really isn't a reason why you can't have multiple provinces in the same database, or we'll sort of leave it up to our members to decide how they wanted to do that. So if we ended up having a Manitoba Saskatchewan database, that's fine. If both of our Saskatchewan members want to be in the same database to share records with each other, but each have their own membership so that they can do their own thing, that's fine. It will really be up to our members to make that decision.
Maybe just, I'm actually here in Kate's location, which is why I get to speak while the rest of you are all muted. Leslie. I'm interested in Michelle's question around the multi-member database, particularly because I know that we had a great many discussions about ramping up the number of records that we could share with each other. And it certainly is true that if the Ontario members decided to all jump in to a single multi-member database for Ontario, that there would be some cleaning up to do, because there's no doubt you'd have duplicated records. But in the end, the whole business of sharing would be vastly simplified. But that's
it'd be all automatic.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, let's say I'm in Hamilton and I share a record to Halton. If we're in the same database and someone from visiting the Halton database submits feedback, it's automatically available to me because we're in the same database. So that feedback on my record comes to me, even though it was submitted through Halton.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no doubt. I think the two things that would be needed to do that. One would be obviously some leadership, because that's not something that correctly can come from CIOC. It's up to the members. And the other is that people would have to be prepared that there would be tidying up and some work involved in determining how the record sharing was going to happen, and with whom and all the rest of it. But once that was done, it really has huge potential to be very, very supportive of the whole business of record sharing and the deduping of repetitive records across databases.
But if it was going to happen, we would do it on a slow basis. We would sort of want to combine people a little bit at a time and monitor how well it was working and so on. But yeah, in the end, it will be up to our members to decide what to do with that, and up to the board to try and decide how we're going to have a cost incentive for people to want to have it structured that way, so that they get the benefits of being in the same database, and that should include a bit of a financial compensation, but hopefully get to retain the benefit of having their own membership, which is more control over the database, the ability to have a say in what CIOC is doing because they have a membership, and so on. But yeah, whatever's going to happen is it's going to take effort and time. And as I say, we're not going to force anybody to do anything. And we know that some of our members will always want to be on their own because we have some of our members that are really doing their own thing. So it's going to be up to our members to decide how to use this. But I hope that some of the people who have sort of come together into one, who would be served by having their own membership, will do that. And there has to be a cost incentive there for them to do it, because they're obviously saving money right now by being in the same database. Anyway, that's all administrative stuff. So I missed some things. Here we go, more. So statistics. Our statistics area has changed quite a bit, actually, to do with the multi-member. So I'll quickly show that, although we're not specifically doing too much testing around that. But we've added some new things to things like use by agency. So it's going to show, here's a record owner, and it's a local record versus an other record. Other being in another membership. So you'll see that throughout, where we've distinguished local records and other records. And that goes on sort of everywhere. So here, let's say I have management privileges for records that are shared in another database. So it would show any modification that had happened on records that are shared with me, but not just the ones that I own, but the ones that are shared with me, and what the churn is on those records as well. So you'll see that throughout the statistics section. One of the important things we've done, though, is around permanently deleted records. So what happened in the past is if you permanently deleted a record, it disappeared from your statistics because we no longer had any way to tie the record to the statistic, so we couldn't report on it. And that's partly why we've always said delete your statistics, and your permanently deleted records should happen around the same time. So if I'm deleting, 3-year-old records, I should also delete 3-year-old statistics so that we don't end up with this problem. But because we have this problem anyway, because some people keep statistics forever, added sort of the unknown at the bottom so that you can still get your statistics even if it's permanently deleted. But it won't be able to tell you which record it's for, but at least it will be able to tell you that that statistic happened, that you've had more views than were there, so your statistics will be more accurate. And then we did some performance improvements around our statistical stuff, which we actually have to do even more because we do have people with many, 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 many tens of millions of statistics, which is fantastic for them, but not so fantastic for our memory use on the server. So there's still more work to be done here, but there's nothing specifically to test. That's all stuff that happens behind the scenes. The fun part of the taxonomy stuff, the taxonomy activation tools. So taxonomy, sure. I'll show the taxonomy activation tools, which we've built in. Okay. There are two new tools for dealing with taxonomy activations. The first is our activation tool. And this, if you're in a database with more than one membership, there is going to be global activations, which apply to everyone, and local activations. Now, global activation can happen at multiple levels. It's basically a window in which local activations should happen. So all local activations have to happen within whatever little window has been created in the global. So if I say I've globally activated at level 2 and 3 here, then my local activations would all have to appear within that window of level 2 and 3. Okay, so it's a way of keeping some consistency across all of the members in the database, but still allowing some local control. So you can make some local decisions about how they want to do their indexing, and yet not be so vastly different. Or if there are particular branches where everyone agrees it's really important to all be consistent and do it the same way, then the global activation can keep people contained in that area. Okay? So instead of having to go into every single record and edit your activation, we now have this lovely new activation tool, which automatically follows certain rules about when you're allowed to activate and deactivate and rule of terms. For instance, I can't deactivate a term that has records attached to it, and I can't roll up a term that doesn't have an active term above it, and so on. So it automatically enforces all those rules for us. You can see here I have a rolled up term. That little arrow means it's a rolled up term, food lines. If I didn't want to roll it up anymore, I could deactivate it, which automatically then lets me deactivate this one. I could activate it, which would make it available for adding to records, or I could change it back into rolled up, and so on. So I can basically go through this whole thing and just click to activate, click to deactivate, easy as pie. So
who's allowed to do that?
So the local activations are controlled by the local super user, and the global activations are controlled by the global super user, basically. So if you're in a multi-member database, everybody has to agree on somebody or a few somebodies having this global super user privilege, which allows them to manage those things that everybody shares. So that would have to be by agreement of who got that kind of a privilege for those things that everybody works within. If I go to my local activations, I can only, I can't roll up because roll-ups are actually managed at the global level. But I can only activate things that are active at the global level. So here, food lines is not active at the global level, so you'll see I don't get an activation thing here. Okay? And I would only be able to deactivate terms that I'm not using. So in this case, I can deactivate rent-a-tree because I don't have any of my records or records that are shared with me that are using this term. Okay, so it wouldn't care if, you know, Halton was in my database and Halton used rent-a-tree. If I personally don't use rent-a-tree, then I can deactivate it. Rent-a-tree, then I can deactivate it. Pardon me? Anyway, does anyone have any questions on the activation tool?
I'm only going to suggest that Corinne and John look like good candidates.
They got a preview of the other tool I'm going to show you, but this one I wasn't ready to demo at the time. So I described what it was going to look like, but now you get to actually see it.
Again, great potential to try and bring more consistency to the way that collaborate with one another.
Yeah. And we can look into things like even the period of time if we don't have people in the same database, we can potentially push out a global activation to everyone so that everybody has the same global activation, and then people can locally activate within it, or, I mean, there's various options there. If you don't have more than one member in your database, you only do a global activation. There is no local activation because you don't need it. If you're the only member in your database, we're not going to make you manage your activations twice. So you would only get the global, and you wouldn't have to do local activations on top of that. That will work. So that's the tool. You can still edit the global activation from within the normal taxonomy update form like you always did, but I would envision that most people would prefer to manage their activation this way because it's just much easier. So along with that, we have another activation tool, which is our recommendation report. Oh, there's a global and a local version of this as well. I'm going to run the global one, I think. This one recommends activations and deactivations based on the best practices of using the taxonomy. So, for example, if I have what we call multi-level activations, where I've activated at more than one level of the taxonomy, it's going to try and figure out if I'm not really using one of those levels. So if I don't have any records at one of those levels, but it's active at multiple levels, it's going to recommend that I deactivate at the level that doesn't have any records. So that's what all these are. So I don't have to accept. You have the ability to accept or not. And then at the bottom, if I say I want to recommend activations, if I have branches of the taxonomy where I have nothing active, or I've activated almost everything at that level, but I've missed some things, it's going to recommend activating at that level. So, my activation tool. So here it's recommending to me, pardon me, I have a big report. Hopefully most of you will be better at maintaining your taxonomy than me and not have such a gigantic list. Maybe not. Okay, it's suggesting BH 1850 to me as something I should be activating. So I'll look up BH 1850 just out of curiosity. So here I have a whole bunch of other things activated at level 3, but I haven't activated BH 1850. It's going to recommend to me that I should be activating this one because it's basically orphaned. There's nothing above it that's active, right? The level 2 is inactive, and the level 1, of course, is inactive. So I have nothing on this particular branch that's activated, so it thinks I should be activating this. Whereas it didn't recommend that I activate home improvement accessibility because I've activated underneath it. So it wouldn't want me to activate both at level 3 and at level 4. So it detected that I should be activating at level 4. So it's likely recommended this one to me. Let's go check because I've already activated at this level. So probably if I look at my report, it will be recommending home barrier removal grants to me. Let's have a look. If I've done my work correctly. Here it is, yes. So yay, it worked. So this hopefully takes a huge amount of the guesswork out of it for people who it's going to make recommendations based on how you're using the taxonomy right now. So what are you actually indexing to? What's associated with records? What branches do I already have active? Where have I not activated anything? And then you can choose to accept or not accept any of the recommendations that it makes. So if you don't like the recommendations, you would just uncheck it. Or you can uncheck all and just check the specific recommendations that you want to take.
So if you check those, is it going to
automatically do whatever it is, yes. So this one, it would automatically deactivate them, and this one, it would automatically activate them when I submit.
Holy Moses.
Yeah, so it's easy. It's like instant. Yeah. Instant, yeah. Any questions about those tools? I'm hoping that maybe someone will run a little session on helping people to use these tools. I don't know whether it'll be me or someone else who is good with the taxonomy, who can help people to use this to hopefully improve their activations a little bit, especially with the taxonomy update that we just had. Because one of the nice things it'll do is after a taxonomy update, it will detect if there are new terms at a branch level that you've already activated on and automatically suggest those to you. Any questions? Okay, well, we're just about done. The last is a really simple thing. It's just the ability to see the counts of the fields that you've added to print reports. So it's just a really, really simple user interface change. So you can see it tells me that I have 2 fields. And when I go in to manage it, it would tell me that I have how many find or replace commands. So incredibly minor change, but hopefully helpful. And that is everything. So the plan from here on in is that I will be posting the video of this session on YouTube hopefully this evening. And over the weekend, we'll be setting up our test sites. We'll also be sending out an email that has this Excel file that I've been working with today. And a link to the test plan, information on how to log into the test sites, and so on. What I would like each of you to do is get back to me with what your preferences are, if you have preferences, about which of these features you would like to test. Please don't just pick one thing. Pick sort of an order of preference if you like. You can even take this Excel sheet and kind of put it in your order of preference or however you want to do it. And I will go by first response first. So the sooner you get back to me, the sooner, or the more likely you are to test the thing that you want to test. And of course, we just generally encourage you to go through the software, practice searches and basic record updating and all of those things just to make sure our day-to-day operations are functioning. And that is it. And for those that didn't notice, remember, if you do manage to get in 8 hours over 2 weeks, which is, 1 hour a day, 4 days a week over the two weeks, then there's a $100 honorarium that goes to you or your organization, depending on whether you're working during business hours. So we encourage you to take advantage of that little reward as well. All right. If there are no questions now, we'll let everyone go. If you think of something after the session, please feel free to post on the message board. You can email me, whatever you're most comfortable with. And we'll try and get this information into your hands as soon as we can so that you can start your work.
Everyone's familiar with the Bitbucket.
Oh, Chris is talking about posting bugs. So in our test plan are instructions about how to report problems. We use a service called Bitbucket, and we do encourage you strongly to use that to record issues. Even if you're not sure if it's an issue, if you can use that, it allows us to keep on top of things, understanding that we may get quite a large number of questions or reports. If you put it in Bitbucket, it makes it a lot easier for us to keep track of what's been done and what hasn't been done. And again, there's instructions on how to do that in the test plan, which will be emailed to you, or a link to it will be emailed to you. Okay. If there's no questions now, then I will say have a nice weekend and a nice Mother's Day, and we'll get started on Monday, hopefully, or sooner if any of you keeners are around on the weekend when we send out our email. Thanks very much.